What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's Monday. We got a new week here starting with a new video on the Karen Reed case. She is giving yet another interview, and this one is being released on YouTube, at least parts of it. And we're going to react to it, break it down together, with the main thought being, how can the prosecution use this against her? Because whenever a criminal defendant goes out, makes public statements, gives public interviews, that is all potentially fair game at trial. So we're going to look at this in a way with an eye to what can the prosecution use, how can this help or hurt Karen Reed in her second trial, and try to figure out why are her attorneys allowing or maybe even promoting her giving interviews at this point between the two trials. So it's a really important fact to bring up that Alan Jackson is with her throughout this entire clip. So he not only knows about it, he's involved in it, he's answering some questions, and we're going to watch this 6-minute clip. We're also going to watch, there's like a 5-minute clip and a 2-minute clip with some discussion around how this interview took place, what other people at this local Boston news station think about it, how it was set up, what the specifics are. It's an important context to this interview when we think about the fact that we know the Commonwealth is going to ask for his notes. We know they're going to ask for the raw, uncut footage, all of it. We know they're going to try to get as much of this interview as they possibly can because they've already done it with other interviews. And he mentions when they've already ordered it before it's even premiered and things like that. But we know the Commonwealth is going to get their hands on a lot more than we see. So we're just going to try to look at the parts they clipped up. I will also say, I think he does a really good job of keeping it unbiased at this point. I don't know if he has a position on this case, but he talks about it from both sides, which I appreciate and think is good. He is an open mind at this point. He talks about the good and the bad of the case, but we all know the Commonwealth is going to try to use this. We talked about it in Alec Baldwin's case, I think probably more than any other case, how this stuff can come back to bite you and hurt you, even if you think you're convincing the public of your innocence, even if you think you're getting the public on your side. Sometimes it can really come back to bite you, especially with professional question askers, right? Lawyers are going to get this, dig into it, and be asking you questions potentially. So let's take a listen to this interview.
We spent several hours with Karen Reed over.
Just kidding. It's on my speed. Let's put it down to normal speed.
We spent several hours with Karen Reed over 2 days with and without her attorneys. We asked for the interview and were somewhat surprised she said yes.
Couple thoughts, and I got a lot of thoughts. Okay, so just get ready. And I want to hear your thoughts in the comments as well in the chat. It says Karen Reed one-on-one, not technically when her lawyer's there. He said with and without her lawyer. So there were parts that her lawyer wasn't there. Why? I don't understand why. Just to prove, and if again, putting my defense lawyer hat on now, to prove how innocent she is and how unafraid she is to speak, and her lawyers aren't controlling what she says. She can speak because when you have the truth on your side, you don't have to worry. Is that why? Are you really proving that? What do you actually get from these interviews? That's also what I want to know. And you as the public, what do you get from watching these interviews? Do you think she's even more innocent if you're in that camp? Do you think she's even more guilty if you're in that camp? Tell me what you get from these interviews, because lawyers all the time, we're doing risk assessment, right? Is this going to help us? Is this going to hurt us? How? And let's make the decision that's best for our client and that's going to generate the best outcome. He also mentioned hours of footage, hours of time spent with her. Are there hours of footage? Are there notes? Because so far we've only got 6 minutes. I think he said there's 3 or 4 segments he's going to release. How much of it is he actually going to release?
Reed tells me she withdrew to New Hampshire for 2 months after her first trial. She's been preparing for round 2 ever since.
I have nothing to hide. My life is in the balance, and it shouldn't be.
It is unusual for someone who's accused of murder to do this interview or others.
I've seen the more information the public has, the more they understand what we already know.
The more information the public has, the more they understand what we already know. What do you think she means by that, right? She's shining a light on public corruption is what it says to me, right? Or I should say on like police corruption and prosecutorial corruption. And The public gets it when she shows them the light, basically. And I'm going to put up some of your thoughts because I think it's very interesting to hear how everybody feels about this interview, because different people that might be jurors are going to have feelings on what Karen Read says and doesn't say. And if somebody does, in fact, watch this, is that going to make them not able to be on the jury anymore? Is she going to say certain things that if they watch this, somebody is going to say, well, you can't be on this jury? Are they going to dig in more? Is that why they're going to need more context behind it? All of that is incredibly important.
Good to see you.
We first met Karen Read at a hotel in the Seaport. She's logged 150 nights here since her legal fight began. It's the command center for her defense, and she is one of the commanders.
When we get new information, we just divide and conquer, and we can break it down really fast.
So I found that to be interesting. And by the way, just total disclaimer, right? I like to critically think about things. I like to think about different angles of different things, right? And as lawyers, when we get information and we're thinking about how it applies to the case and how we can use it in our theory of the case, or maybe in some evidentiary arguments, she just said something to the effect of, we're a great team. When we get things, when we get new information, we can break it down and analyze it quickly. Let me back it up so I can get the exact quote.
We just divide and conquer, and we can break it down really fast.
When we get new information, we can divide and conquer, and we can break it down really fast. If there was a snarky prosecutor on the case and the defense says, we can't do that in time, judge, we were just given all of this information, we can't sift through it fast enough, then I may, if I was a snarky prosecutor, say, judge, and I would cite Karen Read's interview. She says they can divide and conquer things quickly when they get new information quickly. And judges that don't like defendants that give public interviews might add that into their head and say, you know what, you did say that. So you know what, you can only have a week instead of 2 weeks. Now that's already kind of happening to the defense. But that's why you really have to be careful about anything you say, because it can and will be used against you in ways you may not have thought of. Now, her lawyers, very good lawyers, very experienced, have done this on both sides. So they already know all of this. I'm just watching it, thinking critically about it, saying, how can this be used against her? Or how could this benefit her? What is she going to say or do to make the public even more on her side?
On the road, we drove by the financial services firm where she worked for 15 years before her arrest.
Little did I know, I'd reconnect with someone I had dated nearly 20 years earlier, and then he would be tragically killed, murdered, and I've been framed for it.
We appreciate you guys coming here. Read's LA-based lawyer, Alan Jackson, joined her 3 years to the date of John O'Keefe's death.
How much do you think about him?
I think about him in terms of his final days, his final weeks. I mean, we have his cell phone, which a cell phone to anyone is like a diary. The time that I spent with John, 2 years, it's now been 3 since he's gone. And I have very mixed feelings, when I look back on John, because I see a lot of poor decisions that were all precursors to his death.
Okay. We're getting to basically the quotes of the video here. When she looks back on John O'Keefe, she looks back on a lot of poor decisions that were made to the precursor of his death. So if I'm a lawyer, I don't want my client to go out and admit poor decisions made as precursors to the death of the person you're on trial for the end of their life. And from my perspective, this would be something that I would try to find a way to use. Now, she's going to qualify it. She's going to talk about it more. But I think as she talks about it more, there's more that I could use if I was a prosecutor on this case coming.
Or decisions by whom?
By both of us. Just drinking, being around the wrong people is chief.
So what are those poor decisions and who made those poor decisions? We're going to listen to it one more time just to make sure I'm not taking anything out of context. Poor decisions by her and John, drinking, and being around the wrong people. So very clearly the being around the wrong people part, which the defense would want to add in there if any of this clip was ever played at trial. But being around the wrong people is clearly the McCabe's and the Alberts and everybody at 34 Fairview, right? Everybody involved in the conspiracy. But poor decisions and drinking, when you have a case that, there's evidence, people can argue how many drinks did she have, that there was at least some kind of drinking. I don't think they have great evidence of her blood alcohol level, but they were able to at least enter it in the first trial. So drinking, poor decisions could lead to a prosecutor saying, you hit him and you left. You made a bad decision. It was an accident. You shouldn't have drank and drive, because now you don't really know what happened. You could have hit him. And there's more coming up in the interview, I think, that adds to that line of thinking, which is, again, I don't think that's what she's saying. First off, let's be clear. I don't think that's what she's saying, but that's the whole point of you being read your Miranda rights, because you say certain things that can be used against you, can be taken out of context potentially, or can be left open to interpretation of jurors. And that's really what this might come down to, is how will each juror interpret this? Kathleen says poor decisions, etc., shows that she is honest. And that's how some people may admit it or may see it. She never denied drinking. I'm not saying that she denied drinking. This isn't an argument, okay? This isn't a debate. This isn't her confessing to anything. I'm not saying this is her confessing to anything. What I'm saying is she's giving statements a prosecutor can then use. Also, contradictions. Did she ever say she didn't make poor decisions? Did she ever say that drinking was not a poor decision? Did she ever say anything that's going to be able to be contradicted here with the multiple interviews she's given in the past? Because contradictions are always a big thing. Anytime a defendant contradicts themselves, that will be used to try and prove that they are lying, where it might not be a lie, might be more information, something changed, and you learn something. So from my perspective, always dangerous giving these kind of interviews, no matter how smart you are, no matter how much of the truth is on your side, no matter how innocent you are. A lot of innocent people have given interviews that have not helped them as well. It's absolutely happened.
On John, because I see a lot of poor decisions that were all precursors to his death.
Poor decisions by whom?
By both of us. Just drinking, being around the wrong people is chief among them.
Reed admits drinking in the hours before O'Keefe was found unresponsive outside 34 Fairview Road in Canton.
She just repeated the phrase over and over again, I hit him, I hit him.
Multiple first responders testified that Reed initially said herself she hit O'Keefe with her SUV. Reed says she only questioned if she could have hit him.
Yeah, I went through every possibility. He was near the road and he was dying.
Okay. So she right there says, yes, I went through every possibility. By the way, I know the facts of the case. Okay. I realize it. And we're going to talk through all of it. We're going to talk through the accident reconstruction and the evidence that just absolutely seems to point to John was never hit by a car. We're going to talk about all that. But just these words, right? That she went through all the possibilities in her head. She's giving at least some credence to the possibility that it would have been possible for her to hit John with her car. That's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's next to nothing. But you have to realize when there are certain jurors sitting there and they may hear her admit something like, it was a possibility I hit him and we made a lot of poor decisions, including drinking. You can start to see how these statements, which did not exist before this interview, may add little nuggets, may add little context, may add one feather, as Betterow said, on the weight when you keep stacking the pebbles on one side of the scale. Are these pebbles? Are these feathers? What good is coming from the interview? I want to try to think about that as well. I want to try to think about what good also can come from this interview. And maybe it is she's being honest, like some of the commenters have already said. Is it possible her lawyers advised her against this and she did it anyway? This feels wrong, like a big mistake. Why give prosecutors ammo? So I don't know if I would say it's a big mistake so far for what we've left, or if there's anything huge happening, but I see it causing more harm than good so far. If I'm being honest, my just completely honest, transparent, immediate reaction. I highly, highly, highly doubt she did not do this against the advice of her counsel. I think she is taking the advice of her counsel. I think she has done a lot of that. I think that's been smart of her to do. I think they've done as good of a job as you possibly can do. Laura, I don't know if she's innocent so far. Her involvement is not proven. We all want the same thing, for the right person to pay for what happened. Yeah, and actually, I'm going to take this not proven and swing it into Ashley. It was great meeting you today. Yes, Ashley came to my office today. Would you or Papa T ever let a client do media interviews? Doesn't seem like it's worth it. She already has public support. Wonder what this new lead is. Very, very unlikely unless we really thought there was something to be gained, right? And we would have to be very confident about something to be gained. Now, civil cases are much different. A victim being interviewed is much different than a criminal defendant. But Ashley and I talked about, she's been on multiple juries in the past and has jury duty coming up here in the near future. But jurors do not like the not proven vote, because not guilty in America is innocent or not proven. You're just as not guilty of the crime if it's not proven. It is not you're voting for guilty or innocent. And sometimes jurors do not like that. And while I've always thought the best argument for Karen Read is not proven, I think that is absolutely the best and most provable argument for the defense, that the Commonwealth cannot prove this. And I know that people that know more than I do about the case, some think she is provably, factually, obviously innocent. Some people think she is provably, obviously, factually guilty. I get it. But I can't get over the accident reconstruction, the ARCA experts, Trooper Paul, all of that explanation. And since I work in a lot of car accidents and things like that, it just doesn't look like a car hit John O'Keefe based on the examiners afterwards, based on the car, based on the injuries, based on the damage to the car, even with a broken taillight. That just never matched up to me, which I get. To me, that falls in the not proven and more towards the factually innocent side. But you don't, and I get it, it annoys people and people hate it and whatever. I don't care. Say what you want. You don't have to get to that analysis if you're on the jury. The defense does not have to prove her innocence for her to walk home a free woman. But when you have the not proven and you've given interviews and you're giving another interview, they're going to talk about whether or not she takes the stand. To me, all of this tracks even more towards her not taking the stand. I don't care how many times she says, I'm confident, I can do it, I can testify, the truth is on my side. Everything they're doing tracks more of not taking the stand, to where I would be surprised if she took the stand. I would be very, very surprised.
And I didn't think he was purposely put in that place. It did not cross my mind for several days that they did this to John, that John was treated like a piece of garbage.
So now we're starting to get to what could potentially be good about it, right? She said it was a possibility that I hit him with the car because of where he was, but then it took me a few days to realize they did this to him. And they treated him like garbage. Okay. So obviously that's their narrative. Obviously that's where the defense has been going the whole time. And the treated him like garbage part is really, in our cases, sometimes we'll start with, in civil cases, we'll start with the defendant, their bad acts or their bad action, right? If you have a truck driver who drove too many hours or was drinking or was didn't have his license, had his license suspended, whatever it is, we like to start with that. So the jury gets angry. How could you do this? How could you drink and drive? How could you drive without a license? How could you drive over hours just so you wanted to make more money? And you put people's lives at risk when you're driving this killing machine of a truck and you hit this poor boy and he passed away because of what you did. So they're angry at that defendant. You start out when you focus on the bad actions of the defendant. So to me, that seems like what they're going with here, that they treated him like garbage. They did this to him. They covered it up, the bad acts of the third party. That's where the focus of this interview, I think, is where the defendants are trying to go, which is no surprise since that's what they've been doing a lot throughout this case.
Reed says they. She is referring to people who were gathered inside 34 Fairview.
If John was beaten up and attacked in that house, who did it? We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know. Somebody other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John.
What is the one thing in this case you believe proves your innocence?
John's body, no bruise, 6,000-pound full-size SUV, not a bruise on his body, not a fracture below his head.
If you were framed,
I tend to agree with her. The evidence around the body in the car is her best evidence. It really is. And the defense feels they have to have somebody else to point the finger at. And I understand that. And a lot of defense attorneys would agree with them. And they have to give the jury so that if And we heard about this with the Richard Allen juror who came out and spoke. We've heard about it in the Alec Murdaugh case, in so many cases where they vote guilty. Even some where maybe there's not a ton of evidence, or it seems like there's not a ton of evidence, or people report there's not a ton of evidence. They start to ask, well, who else could have done this? Who else could it have been? And the defense in this case wants to make sure they have somebody to answer that question from the jury.
Who's calling the shots?
I don't know the interconnections, the interpersonal relationships among these people. I have a strong personal opinion that what has motivated this persecution of me is power.
I'm declaring a mistrial in this case.
Reed says her initial thought of going through a second trial was a gut punch, but now she sees it as more time to prepare. She's talking now. Will she talk then?
I'm not afraid of taking the stand, and I'm clearly not afraid of speaking. But they're playing hardball, so we'll weigh the pros and cons, and we'll make another second game time decision.
Who would?
So she, again, continues to say she's not afraid of testifying. She did say they're playing hardball, which I find interesting, right? They're playing hardball. I'm not going to say sounds like fear, but it definitely sounds like, I wouldn't expect a prosecutor to play softball with somebody that they believe committed this crime, right? If they're going to cross-examine them. So I think most prosecutors would play hardball in this situation. I just found that interesting that that's her mindset, that they're playing hardball, and therefore, is that a reason she might not testify because they're playing hardball? What does she mean by hardball?
Would you rather face? Is it Adam Lally, who we saw in the first trial, or is it Hank Brennan?
I don't care who.
What do you guys think the answer is? Who would she rather face in cross-examination, Adam Lally or Hank Brennan? What do you guys think?
Would you rather face? Is it Adam Lally, who we saw in the first trial, or is it Hank Brennan?
I don't care who I face.
So she doesn't care, but you guys throw it in the chat, Brennan or Lally. Who would you rather have cross-examine you?
I have the truth. I have the best attorneys. Do your worst.
One of the possible outcomes here could be a conviction. That could be prison time. How much have you thought about that?
I think about it every day, about prison time, and it doesn't frighten me the way it did 3 years ago.
Reed sold her Mansfield home in.
So do you think about prison time? Yes, I think about it every day. When thinking about what positives could come from this, that this is a real person, that they're potentially getting to know a little bit about her personality, and she was a professional. They talk about her work in finance for 15 years, and she's looking at prison time. Sometimes jurors aren't told that. Obviously, it can become very obvious in cases when you're dealing with these kinds of charges, but some sympathy, some talk about the punishment, how bad this is, a life ruiner, obviously, getting it out there potentially for the sympathy discussion publicly about Karen Reed.
November to help pay her estimated $5 million in legal fees.
$5 million in legal fees. That's big. I knew it was a lot. I knew it was multi-million. I don't know if I would have guessed 5. And this guy estimating the legal fees has also just told us that he sat with hours with Karen Reed and her attorneys. So did he run it by them? Like, hey, I've heard 5 million, over under $5 million in legal fees. So that's a lot. That's a lot. I don't know how much her fund has gotten with people giving, but I don't think it's 5 million. So, not a lot of people can afford $5 million in legal fees. Just FYI.
She lives with her parents, who are a part of an inner circle that numbers about 10. Supporters have donated $750,000 to her defense fund.
I don't know if that includes everything. I know that's, what he's reporting. I don't know if that's true, false, or if there are more funds he doesn't know about. But again, not 5 million.
And she says people routinely pick up her meals.
I don't know the last time I've done anything but tip a waiter. And that generosity, that's all helping fuel this. It helps me spiritually and it helps me financially.
She's well aware.
So there's kind of thing number 2 that could come from this. Saying $5 million in legal fees, is that going to enhance people or help people give more money? That's something. Maybe it's a public outcry to help them fund this defense. That's number 1. Number 2, multiple things she has said, which is like giving the public more information has made them see it the way we see it, right? She said that. And then she also said all she does is tip because everybody picks up her meal everywhere she goes. So she is definitely giving the, okay, interesting. I just noticed something that's probably going to cause some chaos in here, but we're going to go with it anyways because I find it interesting and I like talking about what I find interesting. What was I saying? Oh, so she's saying people are picking up the tab for her. So as you know, with juror influence, jurors want to be on the right side of history. They don't want to leave the courtroom and be like, oh crap, we didn't know about all this. And then they're shocked and they feel horrible about what they did. They don't want that. So if they know the public pressure sometimes, even if they don't want to get influenced by it, they can. And is part of this interview to let everybody know the public is behind Karen Read. So if you want to be with the public, if you want to be on the right side of history, you're going to vote with Karen Read. Maybe that's something they feel like this interview is doing to help. Turtle Boy Live, no idea. I could be getting trolled. This might not even really be him, but an interesting comment here. Peter, 5 million is what their billable hours would be. They're not expecting payment. So I don't know if they're not expecting payment at all. I don't know if they're only going to accept what the legal fund is. I don't know if there's more context behind this. I don't know if she's making payments. There are some lawyers that bill and then make payments. There are some defense lawyers that it's a flat fee and they won't start until they start paying it. This is obviously something that has snowballed into a very big defense that is probably, maybe they did know that's how this was going to be at the beginning of the case. I don't know. But this would be a situation where lawyers control what they bill. They also control what they accept, right? And it's not always the same. Many times it is the same. Many lawyers get paid up front, but many times you do have a situation exactly like described here where your billable hour rate, which I believe that, right? Because they've probably got huge billable hour rates, and they've also worked huge hours on this case. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Okay. Confirmed by himself that it's him. And then everybody else said that's the real him. It's the real Slim Shady. I get why she did it. Soon she may be in prison. So she's attempting to use her voice while she can. Can't say I'd be happy if I were her attorney. Kelly said, why in the Red Rum 2 indictments, her charges state says John was assaulted and beaten. Nothing about pedestrian automobile, as well as grand jury foreman is a family member of Boston PD dynasty. I don't know the answer to this. I can't confirm or deny that. I'd have to read it to really be able to answer that fully. Ashley said, does the defense have an obligation to say anything about the carpet they took from 34 Fairview? So it depends. It really depends on what all of the discovery questions are. If they ask for anything you might use in your defense, then potentially that should be discoverable. If they ask for anything that you tested in your defense, but if it's just something that they think is completely irrelevant, that they didn't look at, that they didn't ask for, that the defense has a plan to use at trial, it's like, I'd be like, Judge, why is that relevant? Have them explain to me why that's relevant. I'd love for Hank Brennan to put on the record why the carpet at 34 Fairview would be relevant at all to this case. But if they're going to use it, and if they've tested it and plan on using that testing, they do have to turn it over. You can't hide the ball in discovery. Isn't Karen Read a law professor? Shouldn't she know better? I don't know the answer to this. I know she worked in finance. I don't know everything about her background. So I don't know the answer to that. Amara, I think I'd rather be crossed by Lally. Brendan triggers my flight instinct. Would not end well for me. I'll just tell you, I would much rather be crossed by Lally. That would be my guess. Or my choice. Shoot, I just clicked off the comment that said, but she'd have to be questioned in order to get these statements in. No, there are ways to get defendant statements in, even if they do not testify. So there could still be ways to get in her statements, even if she doesn't testify.
Where not everyone has her back. John O'Keefe's family is convinced she's a killer and have filed a wrongful death lawsuit against her.
Do you feel the presence of the O'Keefe family behind you in court?
I honestly, I almost look through them. Paul sitting there doesn't impact me. It doesn't bother me. That's John's brother. They've attempted to send me messages, and as soon as I see the name comes up, I just delete it.
Online, Read is bombarded by love and hate. Yes, she pays attention.
This case has become your identity. Is that for the rest of your life, or will one day you just want to put it all behind you?
I don't think I can, even if I wanted to, and I'm okay with that.
We asked the Norfolk DA's office if we could profile and interview Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan. That request was declined. I'm Ted Daniel.
So no surprise there, right? They asked Brennan if he could interview him and do a piece on him. He said no. And frankly, I don't blame him. There's not really much you can say as a prosecutor. We've read through the rules of ethics. There are so many things that prosecutors shouldn't say. So I hope he doesn't do an interview, because all that can do is be bad and unfair and prosecutors just carry a certain amount of weight and they can't go on and say somebody's guilty. And to do like some kind of piece on him and his background, I'm sure he would get accused of making it all about him. So better to not do it, although I'm sure people are going to hold that against him and say, oh, see, he's scared. That's why he didn't do it. He should have done it if he had nothing to hide, and he didn't. I would tend to disagree with that. But that's my position on it, that if I was him, I would not do that. Okay, let me see here if we can queue up the next video. There might be an ad on it here because this is on their website. And so he's going to release these in multiple clips. That's not what this is. This is kind of the context around the interview that I found really interesting. And again, if we're thinking about it in a way that what will prosecutors do with this, this is all going to be important. Nicole gifting 20 memberships. That's awesome. Thank you, Nicole, so much. And welcome to all the new members. Hopefully you guys have your gifting turned on so you can join the membership crew here. Let's take a listen to this clip.
More now from Boston 25's one-on-one interview with Karen Reed. We've known about a federal probe tied to Reed's allegations of a police cover-up in this case for years.
Feds turned over thousands of pages of evidence to both sides before the first trial. And just last week, new U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts Leah Foley would not say where the investigation stands.
Here again is Ted Daniel with that layer to this case.
I picture
That is also such a crazy thing to me, that the U.S. Attorney and the FBI and the feds are just like, we're going to stay silent on this. It's like, really? Because they have so much. And again, a lot of people are, pushing the provably innocent. It's obvious. The feds know. If they do, I really think they would step up at this point. I think it's crazy if they wouldn't. If it's really a provably corrupt DA's office and law enforcement office, which, again, if they came out and they said it and they showed it, I'd believe it. So it is just wild to me that they're not, and they're letting it go to a second trial. And, this woman could go to prison for a very, very, very long time, depending on if and what she gets convicted of.
every day that they're working on framing me.
It's no secret. Karen Reed believes she's being railroaded, and critical aspects of her defense have come gift-wrapped from the feds.
All accounts, he didn't do anything wrong. She's a whack job.
State Trooper Michael Proctor's personal text messages, butt dials, and discarded phones.
Did you pull the SIM card out of your phone, Mr. Higgins?
Independent scientists who testified that John O'Keefe's injuries were not from an SUV.
So I did like the way Ted did. And if I'm going to try to nitpick and try to see where we think he is, independent scientists say he was not hit by an SUV. That is very, very strong evidence, potentially the best evidence. We've mentioned it multiple times now, and he mentions it. Which again, I don't think you can deny that at this point. I think it'd be really hard to deny that. Susan, thank you for gifting memberships. Bob Jr. also gifted 5 memberships earlier. Thank you, Bob.
The theory of the case is a car accident. The federal materials included a report that said there wasn't a car accident. That's 95% of the case.
The feds devoted a lot of time and resources investigating what happened here. We are now years removed from that, and there's been no action taken.
Well, I don't know that there's been no action taken.
But no indictments.
No indictments.
25 investigators learned that.
I think Ted's right. When he says no action that has set Karen Reed free, right? Hello Awesome says, Peter, do you think the FBI is waiting because it's a bigger problem and figures they can help her later on, or they can help later on? I'd be pissed about that if I was Karen Reed and I was her lawyers. It's like, if you know that she's innocent, step in and shut it down. You guys have the power and the ability to do that. Think about the wasted time and money, the clog in the system, the law enforcement officers that are still out there investigating crimes and arresting people, the prosecutors that are still prosecuting people. Some of you guys told me about a case that prosecutors prosecuted and it seemed like there was absolutely no evidence. They did a bench trial and Judge Cannoni acquitted the defendant. It's like, every day you don't do something is more corruption, more problems, more people's lives getting railroaded. The power that the DA's office and law enforcement has in these communities, you cannot understate that. You cannot overstate that. Can't be overstated. It is incredible the amount of power they have. So if you know about it and you can step in and stop it and just snap your fingers, you got to do that. You cannot wait. You cannot wait. If they wait, and this, I'll just tell you, like from a civil practitioner's point of view and somebody who's practiced criminal on the prosecution side and the defense side, delays create problems. We sue people all the time for delays because delays cause damages that if you did not delay, you could have prevented. That is a legitimate civil claim that people have damages for. If you know, step in and do it. Now, I'm sure and I hope they would say they don't know that at this point, or if they did, they would step in and do something. And maybe at a later date, they will have more information and they will be able to do it. But I hope as soon as they're able to, they step in and do what's right. Now, we might not know what ends up being what they find to be right.
The Norfolk DA's office has communicated with the U.S. Attorney's Office about this case since Reed's mistrial in July. The DA's office denied our public records requests for any emails or letters, citing in part a federal protective order.
Do you expect that having a new head of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston will change anything?
But I can say that I was very, very happy with what they did and what they disclosed, trying to get the truth out previously, and I hope Ms. Foley does the same thing. I'm looking forward to her continuing the investigation. I hope she does.
As for Michael Proctor, he's scheduled to have a disciplinary hearing tomorrow to determine his future with state police. Karen Reed has a lot to say about Proctor. Ted will join the Boston 25 Morning News team tomorrow at 7:15.
I think he's dropping another one today at some point. All right, let me find the third clip here. I love all of this. I love all of the background information we're able to get as well. Just because I would advise my client not to do it doesn't mean we can't watch and learn something from it. And by the way, like in my real life and real practice, this is helpful as well because I like to see what you guys think when these interviews happen. I like to see how you react and what you think of it. Because from my perspective, I can learn from that. And when I can learn from it, that makes it all worth it. All right, let me try to find this last video here. There are so many on here. Keep clicking the same 2-minute one. It's not it either. We will get it. We will get it. Bear with me. Where did it go? All right, let me answer some questions here while we wait. She is $5 million in debt for legal fees. It was released in a different interview, but not sure they are making her pay it. I think she's sick of not being able to stand up for herself. I don't blame her. And this comes down to like, don't delay. Don't delay. Michelle L. Seems like her attorneys tightened up what she said in this interview, like they don't know who did it, but the evidence says it wasn't her Lexus. So I am interested in hearing more, right? Because we've only gotten 6 minutes of it at this point. And 6 minutes of it, when you said you spent hours with her, to me, is not the full context of what was said, because there's definitely going to be more about what was said in the multiple hours that you spend together. And they said some of it is with Karen Reed's attorneys and some of it is not. All right, I found the video clip here finally.
Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor is expected back at State Police headquarters this morning to continue a disciplinary hearing that could lead to his termination.
Proctor was suspended in July for conduct revealed during the Karen Reed trial. This morning, we've been bringing you Ted Daniels' one-on-one interview with Karen Reed. She was more than willing to talk about Proctor and others.
A lot of people have thoughts about my whistling. I didn't even know I was whistling. I'm a big whistler. Get it from my dad, also a big whistler. That's funny. I love when something happens and the comments catch it and go with it, and it just makes me laugh. Tuco Limited. Can Karen let everyone, potential jurors, know in these interviews that ARCA was hired by the FBI? Well, I mean, yes, she can say ARCA was hired by the FBI. But if they find that out and know that, it could potentially get them struck and not be on the jury if they can no longer be fair and impartial. Duncan, Idaho. Are there not legal, jurisdictional, constitutional barriers to the FBI stepping into this case? Not if they find fraud and cover-ups and conspiracies to commit crimes like this. It's not like, oh, well, we're different sovereigns and we don't want to step on anybody's toes. No, that's exactly what they should do if they find that out in this situation. Question: what would happen if the Supreme Court dismisses the charges, but they are in the middle of trial? So you mean dismisses the first and the third charge? I think if that's what you're talking about, that Supreme Court decision, then those would be removed from the indictment and the jury would go forward on charge 2. I would think. I may have to think about that a little bit more to give a full in-depth answer, but let's listen to some more of what they have to say here.
What troubles me is how evil people are.
We covered a lot of ground with Karen Read, including those who want her in prison. The Norfolk DA, state police working for the DA, and specifically Trooper Michael Proctor. The detective zeroed in on Read within hours of John O'Keefe's death. Proctor has testified that's where the evidence, including Read's cracked taillight, took him.
Yeah, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though.
During Read's first trial, Proctor's personal feelings for Read were exposed in his personal text messages.
What was it like to be there in court and listen to all those texts?
Proctor was just letting the public know what I've known about Michael Proctor, who he really is. Nothing Michael Proctor texted and admitted out loud in court about me would ever offend me.
So again, that's her showing her strength, that it's never going to offend her because of who he is and how bad he is. But also another little nugget that she dropped: we're letting the public see the real Michael Proctor I always knew. So again, is that a little indication to the public that they're going to hide stuff from you? If you end up on this jury, you're not going to see everything. You're not going to hear everything. But we, Karen Read's side, is the one trying to open up the truth and show you what the truth is. So listen to what we have to say. They're trying to cover up your eyes. We're trying to open them up.
Your figures of speech include the following. She's a bitch.
Objection.
Is that right?
Yes.
You spent hours having him read those out loud. I'm sure that was done by design.
It was. Everything that we did in that cross-examination of Michael Proctor was done by design.
There was
no surprise there, right? And it went very well for them, meaning horrible for Proctor, meaning disgusting for the prosecution side. But that's exactly how the defense planned and wanted it to go.
It was an effort to indict Read on new witness intimidation charges last March. It failed. Read says even people around her were under scrutiny.
Our drivers have been approached by the state police, had very close friends, had their cell phone records subpoenaed for an indictment that never happened.
Have you ever been followed?
I don't know. My eyes are akimbo all the time. I look at law enforcement differently, more warily.
How do you know you're being tracked?
I know from affidavits from the state police at the Norfolk DA's office. They knew what flight I was on. They knew when I landed. They knew when I came back. And it's disturbing. It's invasive, and it's desperate.
That doesn't really bother me personally. It doesn't bother. That's not surprising to me.
All right, Ted Daniel joining us now. First, fascinating.
No, I shouldn't say her being followed, but if they're tracking her movements, I would think that's something they're allowed to do when somebody's out on bond with these charges.
Interview, Ted. There, she just called the state police desperate. Others may have used that word to apply to her, and seeing she didn't get an acquittal the first time around. But why do you think it is she agreed to do this interview?
So again, the host here says we have heard people think there might be desperation on both sides, but why do you, Ted Daniel or Daniels? I'm not sure. Why do you think she agreed to do this interview? Because he even said in the first clip we watched, we were surprised when we asked for her to do an interview. She actually said yes.
Comes across as very smart and analytical, that every move that they're making, she's a part of, and it's calculated. I think she says to me she has nothing to hide and wants to get her message out. I would expect that, they went over the pros and the cons of this with a trial fast approaching. And in the end, they thought it was something that they wanted to do. It's not the first time that she's gone on in a segment like this. She did a couple national interviews. And I think that this was something that, I reached out to her team and heard back within a couple of days.
So he even says, pretty quick to respond within a couple of days. This is something they wanted to do, and they've done it before. So and now he is very clear that he reached out to them. They did not reach out to him. I think that matters. But they were okay with it, even to some people's surprise. Greg says, at what point does Proctor's malfeasance or loss of his job have an impact on the admissibility of the evidence he was responsible for? So that, the text messages, the disgusting conversations that he had, does not necessarily affect the admissibility of the evidence, but it does affect the weight and the credibility of the evidence he was responsible for collecting, interviews, whatever it may be, because they're going to be able to hammer him and tell the jury, like, I said this from the jump, a vote for the Commonwealth is a vote for Proctor is basically what the defense wants to do. It's like, you're with him, you got to pick a side, and you're going to pick his side, but it doesn't necessarily make it inadmissible. There would have to be something wrong with the collection or prove fraud or things like that. His nastiness or even losing his job does not automatically make the evidence inadmissible. Sage, could the feds be waiting for enough proof to arrest Morrissey because they know they can't federally charge for his death and won't do it at the state level? I think they found a lot on and are building the case. So I don't know the answer, but usually, yes, they want to have enough proof to where they feel like they can convict somebody before they really move on it. They don't want to, I'll tell you what, and this maybe it sucks and it's hard, but they're not going to jump the gun just because they think Karen Reed might be innocent, or they think she maybe didn't do it, or they disagree with the way that the DA's office is handling this case or sees this case. They're not going to jump the gun before they have the evidence necessary that they feel confident. And I'll just tell you, the feds, the bar is even higher. For you to get charged or indicted federally, the bar is even higher. They do it a lot less than at the state level, and they win a lot more than prosecutors do at the state level. So it is a different process, no doubt about it.
I actually have two questions for you. What is she like off camera too? Same way?
Yeah, pretty much the same. You get the feeling, I mean, she's always on the phone or she's always making plans. She's, when we met her, the day that we met her, she was going to meet with her lawyer, Alan Jackson, she said, because she had a private investigator hunting down a new lead, and they were going to analyze and go over what information that was provided to them. So, yeah, I mean, she's very cordial, very nice person, but.
Now that can also be helpful. Off camera, not recording. What's she really like? Thoughtful, smart, normal person, always planning to do something, doing X, Y, and Z. I think that was kind of a good report, right? She's not fake, doesn't turn it off and, start screaming at people or whatever, right? She doesn't change when the cameras are off, number one. Number two, I do think that always kind of moving and shaking and planning something and setting something else up, there are going to be people that run with that in the other direction. Like, she's always plotting and scheming. So it's like, you just have to be careful. Everything publicly said there, I'll just tell you, as someone who has gotten a lot of public response in this case, people are going to see it the way they're going to see it. And it might not always be the same way you see it. So everything you give them is probably going to add into the way they see this case. I don't think there's a lot of people being swayed or convinced by whatever's being said in the public right now. I could be wrong, but that's another reason why I think the benefit of this interview was probably outweighed by the risk.
When you look at all in this totality here, these are some really serious charges against her, and she's got a tough road.
Yeah.
So you reached out to the DA's office as well.
Yeah, we wanted to give equal time to the DA's side of this. So it's the new prosecutor. Adam Lally did the first trial, and now Hank Brennan was appointed a special prosecutor. He's long known defense lawyer. I used to speak
Whitey
to
Bulger case.
Yeah, and I used to speak to Hank about other stories. So we made a request. We said, hey, we'd like to profile.
That's also interesting to me that Ted Daniels has talked to Hank Brennan about other cases, a little bit of a legal correspondent to him. So they have some kind of relationship. So are they talking off the record? Yeah, he didn't give an interview, but is he going to know certain things? Is it going to change the way he looks at the case? I don't know. It's interesting to me as well. Peter, if she's acquitted, could she file suit against the police? Does the American system allow for that? Yes, it's very difficult. There's all sorts of immunity and protections involved. But if she can really prove the corruption and the fraud and the setup, the conspiracy that she's alleged, if she can actually prove that, there's absolutely civil laws in place that would allow for that. Tina D, innocent until proven guilty. It's the law. Couldn't agree more. Connie, Tina, sorry, I don't know what that means, Tina D.
File Hank and give him sort of, an on-camera interview, and they decline that request. And I get it. There are some stipulations that the DA and the prosecutor has to follow in terms of out-of-court discussion. I did say, hey, I realize in my email, I said, I realize there may be some things that have to be left off the table. We were fine with that with them, but unfortunately.
And again, that's respect. He's trying to do it the right way. He's not trying to weasel. I think this guy's a pro. Like, I think he's professional. I don't think he's trying to color it one way or the other. I don't think he's over sensationalizing it. That's been my review of him tweeting and this interview and this discussion so far. He's trying to play it down the middle and just get information for all of us. And then the people watching can give their opinion, right? It's a lot of what I try to do. I want to hear your opinion on things. I give you my opinion about the legal stuff and what lawyers are thinking, what they may do, why the judge is doing certain things. And I think he's really just trying to present the information, and he's not hammering the prosecutors, which I appreciate. He's like, I asked them, they said no, and I get it because they're hamstrung a little bit. And I even told them, I get it. We're not going to be able to talk about things. I'm not going to hold that against you. I'm not going to hold it like you're trying not to be transparent, but they still couldn't. And I get why, right? And I think that he handled that appropriately, but people are going to want to know, why didn't they talk? Why didn't Hank Brennan come out and talk? And now you know, which I think is important.
Fortunately, didn't happen.
You had talked about this in the piece that aired last night, and she has talked to, as you mentioned, to you and to other outlets.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, will she take the stand now in the second trial? And she mentioned, well, that'll be a game time decision. What's your gut telling you on that?
I think she probably won't. I mean, as rare as it is for her to do all these interviews with us, I think would be more rare for her to take the stand. But one of the things that the new special prosecutor is trying to do.
By the way, I never really thought about it in those terms, but I agree with him. It's even more rare to do these interviews. Or I said it's even more rare. Wait, what did he say? He said it's more rare for to take the stand. So I disagree with that. I think it's more rare for defendants to come out and do interviews than it is for defendants to take the stand. And that just may be sheer number thing with like in custody defendants and small, not high profile cases. So it's not really a fair statistical analysis, but
is take all the statements that she's made and find contradictions. Statements that
I'm going to back it up because he makes a really good point about what
her
the prosecutors are going to try to do. And they know this full well.
Stand. But one of the things that the new special prosecutor is trying to do is take all the statements that she's made and find contradictions. Before this story even aired, we got a court order at this station saying the DA's office wants all the raw interview. They want everything. And
all the raw interviews. So hours they spent together. Is there hours of video? Is there hours of conversation off camera? Did she slip up? What did she say? They're going to get all that. And that opens you up to risk as well. Now, because of all the litigation we've seen about the other reporter's notes, I'm sure he was careful about what he wrote down his notes and what are his impressions versus quotes from Karen Reed as to what is going to be discoverable and what isn't. We kind of already know that based on what's happened in court, but they're already going at it. They're already going after it. There's no surprise there. By the way, if you guys like these clips and the breakdown of these clips, make sure you hit that like button, please. And let me know in the comments if you want me to continue to do this, because I think there are more clips, 2 or 3 more clips coming from this interview. So let me know if you want me to continue to break these down like this, or pause it, give you my thoughts, how the prosecutors might be able to use it, why the defense is doing this, the risk reward. If you are interested in more of this with the clips that are coming, please let me know in the comments and by hitting the like button on this video.
Notes. So the DA's office has been doing that to everyone that she's spoken with, because they want to say, hey, there's this inconsistency there, or she said this during this interview, she said something different during another interview. So it was surprising, though, that we got it 14 hours after the promo aired and the story hadn't even gone on TV yet.
Yeah.
Which maybe tells you the difference between these prosecutors and the prior prosecutors. They are on it. They are doing everything. They're gathering everything. They're reviewing everything. They're going to leave no stone unturned this time. You know, it's a little bit sad because to me, it would have been nice if they were on the case from the jump. I think things would have been very different. I think it would have been a much better investigation. Although I have to say, they came into this case knowing how poor the police investigation was. And that's hard for me to wrap my head around as somebody who has had to make these prosecuting decisions and prosecuting cases like this. It's like, you guys dropped the ball. Like, it sucks. It's going to feel like no justice, but if this is how the investigation goes, there's nothing I can't prosecute my way around horrible investigations that just leave too many holes. So I don't know if they've got more information we haven't seen yet, if there's a different way to look at it or explain it than was explained the first time. So I'm going to remain open to that, but that's the tough part about jumping on the case when they did.
It's, expected almost too, but it's something that so many eyes are going to be watching. I mean, you did an incredible piece on that story as well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see what happens.
And we'll be
all right. So that's the end of the clips. I'm going to hit some questions here. What do you think the state thinks about this airing after the Super Bowl in Massachusetts? The promotion for the interview was aired during the game. I think they're going to try to use it against her. I don't think this bothers the state. I think the state's going to tell the judge and be like, Judge, she's still giving interviews, all this stuff. We should be able to use this for that. She's trying to poison the jury pool. I also think they're going to try to, anybody that likes Karen Reed or has seen her interviews or thinks she seems like a nice person, they're going to try to strike them. Say, Judge, she did these interviews. She created this problem. She cannot benefit from it. Lisa said, when the feds did Tui, were they legally obligated to give them every single thing that they found, or could the feds have held back certain info to protect their own investigation? The feds always hold stuff back. That's just my opinion, that the feds always hold stuff back. They go by their own rules. And even sometimes when they're forced to, they still don't turn over everything. So I'll just leave that there. Reese's mom, I can't believe how many people in this chat who've never seen all the evidence know more than the ARCA experts. I don't know. The chat's moving pretty quick. I've followed as much of it as I can, but there are always chatters I don't see. But I appreciate everybody coming in, sharing their opinion, talking about what they see, asking their questions. It makes it fun for me. I get to learn a lot from you guys, so I'm always appreciative of that. Will you guys go ahead and hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and hit that alert bell so you don't miss any future videos on the Karen Reed case or future topics you may be interested in. Always let me know when a new case or different case is coming up that you're watching. I'd love to dig into it. If enough people are interested and have questions about it, if I can answer them, that's what we do here. So that's all we got. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.